On today's show, Reed Sheppard helps ignite the comeback, and then Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun finish it off with their clutch fourth quarter play against the Bucks. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Fridays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the Rockets' 122-115 come from behind dub against the Milwaukee Bucks. They rallied late in this game. A spark created by Reed Sheppard. His impact was huge in this game. Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun being able to finish things off, putting the team on their respective backs in the fourth quarter with their clutch plays. Some great playmaking down the stretch from Kevin Durant. Some big-time scoring from Alperen Sengun to close out this one. Fantastic game, in a game that they kind of trailed for most of the night, afternoon, I guess. We're gonna get into all the little bits and bobs from this game. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On NBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Which Locked On, super exciting stuff, is now the #1 sports podcast in the nation. So thank you for being a part of the show, whether you're every day or whether you occasionally stop in. Thank you for being a part of what has made this show and our network the #1 sports podcast network in the entire nation. So thank you very much for that. Let's get into this game, because I really do feel like the big story from this game, and hell, you can to ask Kevin Durant himself, was Reed Sheppard, right? KD made sure to share after the game, doing his post-game walk-off interview with courtside reporter Vanessa Richardson, that he said that Reed Sheppard was the reason that they won this game. That he felt that Reed's kind of spark off the bench, in particular, one play that he had, the one where Reed tipped the pass away from AJ Green, and Tari Eason was able to recover it, get down the court, and then Reed was able to relocate into the corner for that transition three. That play, Katie said, kind of, sparked them and helped ignite, right, the comeback. And Reed's play in general in this game, I think he has been stacking a lot of great games, and this feels like the best all-around game that he's played so far. 16 points, 6 of 10 shooting, 4 of 6 from downtown, 2 assists, 4 steals, 1 block, so 5 stocks total, only a couple turnovers, was a +3 in his 29 minutes, and closed the game. Like, he was out there for pretty much the entirety of the fourth quarter until Ime Udoka elected to go a little more defense-oriented late in the game. But I think there's a lot of big things to take away from this and from Reed's play. First of which, the offense is becoming really, incredibly consistent, to where when Reed pulls the trigger on a three, I think it's going in every time now, which is exciting because the Rockets haven't had a true shooter like that in a while, and having that type of a weapon to be able to come off the bench and provide spacing for Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun is huge. And Kevin even mentioned it in the same post-game interview, talking about, what worked so well for you guys there in the fourth quarter. How were you able to take over the game? He talked about the spacing. He talked about the floor spacing being great, guys in the right spots, a lot of room to work with. And we've seen that spacing has been kind of an issue for this team so far this season. So when you throw Reed Sheppard out there instead of a Josh Okogie, then the spacing gets a whole hell of a lot better with Reed Sheppard and Jabari Smith Jr. and Kevin Durant all out there to help kind of space things out. And even if you do still have Alperen Sengun and Thompson out there, you still have plenty of room to work with. So The spacing from Reed Sheppard is huge. The consistent offense is huge. The confidence in his own ability on offense, watching him get to his spots in this game, it was pretty heavily the 3-pointers, but he had that one midi pull-up that was solid. Couple midi pull-ups actually that were solid. And just watching him play without the hesitation in his game anymore, just knowing, hey, I'm going to get to my spot here. This is what I want to do. But the biggest and most exciting development, right, is just watching him continue on a game-by-game basis to get better defensively, to understand picking and choosing his spots. And Ime spoke a little bit about this post-game, understanding where and who he can help off of, how he can adjust, within certain coverages, and becoming more and more aware and adept at handling how other teams are attacking him at times, right? This was a game where I think this was the game where I feel like we've seen the most man-to-man defense with Reed Sheppard on the floor. Because again, Ime has fallen in love with that zone for better or for worse. And he does use it a lot to protect Reed. He also does it a lot to kind of handle having the double big lineups out there. And I know there was like an interview with Ime the other day where he was on the radio saying he doesn't do zone to protect any one play. It's like, okay, guys, sometimes they're not going to give you everything in the interview, or admit to what they're doing in the interview, because that just looks bad on Reed. But the reality of the situation is, this game, the Rockets were able to play a lot of man-to-man coverage, and it was Reed's chance to kind of show, like, granted, he's guarding AJ Green, which isn't like, AJ Green, not a super big threat to like attack off the bounce or, whatever. And they didn't really, I guess, hunt for the mismatches like some other teams have done. But regardless of that, the defense was still phenomenal. The 4 steals, career high there, had the 1 block in there, one of those strips from behind. And that play, the one where he made the defensive play on AJ Green, tipped the ball back to the middle of the court, got it to Tari, got that 3. KD kind of credited that with, waking everybody up and getting everybody like back into the game and playing hard. And, sometimes you need one of those plays, one of those good defensive stops that turns into, a big offensive moment, be it a big 3-pointer or like a crazy dunk or transition play, and one maybe, that kind of like reinvigorates the whole team. And that's what it felt like that play, and kind of by extension, all of Reed Sheppard's play meant to the team in this game. And I think the biggest takeaway here is from Reed's play, and he's stacking good games, guys. Like, this is impressive, right? It's not like, oh, he had one good game and then he's bad for a few games. He is stacking high quality, good games, and he's earning the favor and the trust of the coaching staff. Played 29 minutes in this game, was the leading minutes guy off the bench, played more minutes than Josh Okogie, and played almost as many minutes as Jabari Smith Jr., who finished the game with 31 minutes in the starting lineup. There is a non-insignificant chance that at some point, as we navigate through this season, also kind of dependent on what ultimately happens with Dorian Finney-Smith and how long he takes to get back, which, again, still no official timetable, still no update. But there's a chance we might see Reed Sheppard eventually slid into the starting lineup, because, again, he is the closest thing you get to a 1-for-1 replacement of Fred VanVleet. And if his development is able to accelerate, especially defensively, to a point where the offense is what it is, and he's just this like lights out, 3-point shooter that provides this elite floor spacing and can facilitate and run pick and roll and do all these things offensively, then that's going to far outweigh, even if he is a little bit of a negative at times defensively, which in a game like this, where he was a plus on defense, where he, I think he got, pardon me, he got beat on like, I think one drive, like early in the game. And then he was solid the rest of the way. Like, it wasn't like a repeated, like, oh, he's ball watching here, getting, targeted and beaten on drives over and over and over. It wasn't like that at all. This was just this was Reed Sheppard's best game of his career. And he was a huge part of the Rockets' ability to rally and come back after being down 11 at halftime, and kind of sparking a little bit of that comeback, in the third quarter, to go into that fourth quarter only trailing 3. And then even in that fourth quarter, being able to weather some of the action in the fourth quarter, and then getting to that late stretch where the defense was able to put clamps on and kind of pitch a shutout to close things out. Was really, really impressive stuff with Reed Sheppard being out there, being trusted to close this game out. So very exciting developments for Reed Sheppard. Coming up, I want to talk about the impact of Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun closing this game out in the fourth quarter. Some clutch playmaking from Kevin Durant and some clutch scoring from Alperen Sengun. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, but every day, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for these opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache sometimes between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump up right before you hit checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer for your team. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. My favorite thing about using Game Time is they are so transparent with the price. What you see in the little bottom corner of your screen is the price that you're going to pay upon checkout. No hidden fees, no price gouging. And again, they don't hit you with like the digital handling fees or the service charges at the end of that. So I love that. I love the transparency. Take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. I mentioned, the Rockets kind of igniting and getting that comeback. They had an 8-0 close to that third quarter. And that literally was the difference, is closing that quarter strong. Would have been, if they hadn't been able to do that right, they would have just basically carried the same deficit that they had at halftime into the final frame. And I don't know that they would have, maybe they could have still rallied, but that close to the third quarter was huge. And they kind of weathered a significant Giannis storm in the third quarter of this game. You go back and look at it, and Giannis did so much of his damage on his way to his 37 points in this game. He had 14 of them on 5 of 9 shooting in that third quarter. And what was really cool, and a luxury that the Rockets haven't had in quite a long time, is a star player to be able to go like band for band with Giannis in that quarter. Kevin Durant actually outscoring him 15 to 14 in that frame. KD in that third quarter, 15 points on 5 of 8 shooting, hit a 3, was 4 of 6 at the free throw line. That's the crazy thing, is KD missing a couple free throws is like the weirdest thing that happened. And yet he still managed to rack up 15 and really put the Rockets on his back there in the third quarter. And I'm talking like he had that one ridiculous turnaround. He was getting pressured by the defense and got hit like on the hip or like shoved and just flipped up some BS towards the rim, really, and it went in and it worked. But he was so hyper aggressive there in that third quarter, and putting up the offense that the Rockets really desperately needed, because they were kind of struggling to find some consistent offense from elsewhere. In particular, it's unfortunate that shout out to Firebear on Twitter. Maybe this isn't the game to drop this, but Twin Reaper and Jabari Smith Jr., he was struggling a little bit in that third quarter, just 2 of 8 shooting, only 5 points, couple turnovers. And so kind of the dichotomy between like KD was able to just flip the switch, take over the game in that third quarter, and then Jabari struggling a little bit. Not the end of the world, just a little bit of a rough night at the office for Jabari, but not the end of the world. 16 points, 5 of 15 shooting. It wasn't pretty, but the Rockets needed every one of those points to make it work. And Jabari was also one of the guys tasked with, at times dealing with Giannis on the other end. And it took a whole team effort to try and slow down Giannis. And weirdly enough, I kind of feel like the Rockets did an okay-ish job at handling Giannis. 37 points, 14 of 25 shooting doesn't look great, but they also didn't let Giannis, I think you have to pick your poison with star players, right? And it's either you let the star player do all the heavy lifting and score all the points themselves, and they're going to gas out at some point in the game, which it kind of felt like that's what happened with Giannis a little bit in this one, that he just didn't have the juice late in the game in that fourth quarter. He still managed to put up 12 in the fourth, but even near there, at the very tail end, as the Rockets were forming that wall and really loading up on Giannis late in the game, forced him into some tougher shots, some turnovers. Ultimately, it felt like the Rockets' game plan on Giannis did work, even though the stats look a little rough on the page. But what really stood out from the offense in this game, because late, I apologize, still getting over being a little sick, guys, my bad. The defense did what it needed to do in slowing down. I say again, slowing down Giannis. That stretch of defense for the Rockets to close the game, where Milwaukee literally only scored 4 points in the final 3 minutes. It was a 22-9 run over the final 5 minutes of game time. And just going back and watching as the clock kept ticking down, the Rockets defense kept ramping up to where Milwaukee only scored 2 points across the final 2 minutes of action. And meanwhile, the Rockets were on the other end, absolutely taking care of business. And it was great to see them not only executing at a high level on one side of the court, but doing it on both sides, right? Being able to put up 40 points in the final frame, to be able to come back, take the lead, and then taking the lead on a Jabari Smith Jr. 3-pointer, but taking the lead and then also pitching what felt like kind of a shutout at the end of the game on the Bucks. And some of that has to do with just, again, I think when things start clicking a little bit more offensively at times, it's a little bit easier. And you can see when a big shot goes down, or when they're, as they were rallying from behind, there was a point where the Rockets defense, just started flying. They were getting after every single guy. They were showing and recovering and rotating quickly, not giving up any clean looks. And there's definitely a level of that defense wasn't super present for the first, maybe 3-ish quarters. Or if it was only present very sporadically. Whereas to end the game, the Rockets were able to truly lock in. And it's nice to see that they have that level that they can hit defensively. And again, twofold, it's nice seeing that they're able to lock in and defend at that level, even with Reed Sheppard out there on the floor. Now, granted, again, Ime did eventually pull Reed for a Kogi at the end, just to have a more defensive oriented lineup, but that's understandable. It's no different than Ime pulling Alperen Sengun at the end of a game, because he wants to have that defensive oriented lineup out there. But especially in light of the most recent game against the Spurs and how the Rockets kind of failed, and in particular, KD really failed at handling the basketball, keeping the ball secure, and executing down the stretch of the game. This game felt like a breath of fresh air to watch Kevin Durant conduct offense at such a high level. 7 assists for KD, only 3 turnovers. So not only was KD completely locked in and had one of his, maybe arguably his best offensive performance of the season from an efficiency perspective, 31 points on 15 shots, 11 of 15 from the floor, perfect from downtown, 2 of 2, and then 7 of 9 from the free throw line. Not only was he uber efficient offensively, but he also was playmaking at a very high level. And specifically there in the fourth quarter, Kevin Durant was super clutch with the passing. 4 assists, only 1 turnover in that fourth quarter to go along with his 7 points on 2 of 2 shooting. Had some great passes to Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun kind of over the top of the defense to get them scoring, get them going downhill, or not downhill, but get them, kind of on the roll. And those open looks are so important to capitalize on it. Again, the Bucks defense wasn't quite the same as, I guess, like the Spurs defense with sending two to the ball from like 30, 35 feet away. So we didn't see that level of pressure. And maybe that's still going to be a weakness that the Rockets need to figure out and address and understand how to overcome. But seeing KD kind of get past some of the, especially so like, he had a couple of like those early turnovers where you're like, guy reaches in and tips the ball away, or you're just like, you're thinking like, just be a little stronger with it. Like, don't turn this over. But getting away from the couple of those that he had earlier in the game, being secure with the ball in the fourth quarter and being able to deliver as a playmaker down the stretch of this game, right? Because like KD still did his scoring in the fourth quarter, but it was also kind of like Alp led the way with his 10 points, but it was kind of like the love was spread around where like Jabari had 5, Amin had 5, Reed had 5, Steve-O had 6. Like it was kind of a group effort there in the fourth quarter to be able to close out the Bucks, spearheaded by KD's playmaking and Alperen Sengun muscling through the rest of the way, which is one other thing that I want to talk about. The Alperen Sengun versus Giannis Antetokounmpo battle, the rematch of Eurobasket. Alpi with some big plays down the stretch of this game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, you can head on over to FanDuel.com. Take a look at the odds-on favorites to win the title this season, and your Houston Rockets now sliding into the top 5 at plus 1,200. Directly in front of them, you have the Knicks at plus 1,200 as well, the Nuggets at plus 700, the Cavs plus 650, and the OKC Thunder still the favorites to repeat at plus 210. But hey, Rockets, with that Bucks win, now top 5. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com, where they're giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Again, go to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, guys, I'll admit I'm a little disappointed in myself that it took all the way until segment 3 to be able to like spend time on Alperen Sengun. It just kind of felt like there were, as good as Alpi was, it kind of felt like the other, couple, storylines, things that we had to talk about from this game took some precedent. But like Alpi has been good. Like, I mean, you go back to the Spurs game where he went toe-to-toe with Victor Wembanyama, and then this game where he was just absolutely schooling Giannis late on both ends of the court, mind you, because here's the thing is, look, I know Giannis had his 37 on 14 and 25. Star players, superstar players are going to get theirs. Your ultimate goal is to make them work harder for it. And it felt like, and Ime Udoka commented on this postgame, it felt like Alperen Sengun did a good job and was arguably the Rockets' best defender guarding Giannis straight up one-on-one. Really making it tough for him to work, walling him off, putting him in positions where, like basically being strong enough until the help defense was able to come over and kind of form that wall and load up on Giannis, leading to some of those turnovers late in the game, right? All three of those Giannis turnovers coming in the fourth quarter specifically. So again, gassing out a little bit, right? Struggling just a little bit to get past that wall that the Rockets were building. But a really strong night for Alpi, who continues basically on a nightly basis. He's flirting with a triple-double. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. Did have 5 turnovers in this one, and there were some points where like it felt like Alpi was being a little loose with the ball. And if I'm being 100% honest, him losing the basketball and then immediately every time his arms shoot straight up, like where's the foul call? There's definitely times where it's a foul, but there's also plenty of times where it's not a foul. And that's one of like those like smaller kind of low key things with Alpi where the complaining for fouls can be a little frustrating at times. I wish he would reel that back in a little bit because he's just such a good player that I kind of want him to just focus on playing his game and not worrying so much about what the refs are or aren't calling. And that's something that young players still have a tendency to have to try to break out of a little bit. And something that I'm sure Ime has given him an earful about time and time again. But the 10 of 15 shooting was super encouraging in this one, especially because he didn't I harped on this a little bit last game, but he didn't fall in love with the 3 ball. He didn't fall in love with, being at distance, even though Milwaukee has, a back line of Giannis and Myles Turner and, a lot of length and shot blocking ability. He was a bulldozer, and he got downhill. He got into the paint. He posted up. He was finishing tough physical baskets in and around the hoop. He only had 3 free throws in this game. He probably could have walked away with at least 6+ from a lot of buckets and stuff that weren't getting whistled for and ones and stuff under the rim. But that final play of the game, where he's walking the ball up and essentially just straight up walking the ball up and getting full court pressed by Giannis. Just all the pressure in the world from Giannis, and doesn't matter as he drives it up, just busts out this behind the back, right to left behind the back to spin around Giannis, walks it back out to the 3-point line, beats him again, breaks him down off the dribble again, and then spins on Myles Turner at the rim and finishes through contact for that and one. What? That play was absurd. That was the play of the game. That was the exclamation point on top of an already what felt like an already big win. And to see Alp kind of make Giannis look like a little bit of a fool there at the end. And again, this was that Eurobasket rematch, right? Already beat him in Eurobasket, beat him again on his home court in Milwaukee, which has been, kind of historically a hard place for this Rockets team to be able to win on the road. And so seeing Alp kind of continue to have these types of games, right, against MVP caliber players, right, against, Wemby's ascended to that next level. He's in those conversations now. Giannis has been in those conversations and has won MVPs, right? So to see Alp playing very consistently at this level, it's encouraging to see him get back to the finishing touch in and around the basket, right? He's up to 49% shooting from the floor on the season. But that playmaking, the rebounding, just a little bit of everything that he brings to the table on a night-to-night basis, and watching how he's, kind of a chameleon, right? There's some games where he needs to play make more and he is the Rockets' primary facilitator. And then there's other games where, like in this one, to close this one out, he was the Rockets' scoring punch in that fourth quarter, right? Kevin Durant took a little bit more of a backseat, was more of a playmaker in that final frame. And then Alperen Sengun was able to step up in a big way and be the scoring punch that this team needed to kind of lead the way, lead the charge in that fourth quarter. And when a player is so gifted as both a scorer and a facilitator, there's always that juggling act of figuring out, okay, is it do I facilitate right now? Am I looking to trust my teammates and get them involved? Or do I just simply try to take things over myself and do what I know I'm capable of doing, right? We saw it for years with James Harden in a Rockets jersey, right? There were some games where James literally, it felt like all he did for the first 2 quarters was pass the ball. And then in the third quarter, he'd turn, he'd switch the mentality and then go straight into scoring mode and drop double-digit points in the third quarter. And so that's kind of a development for Alperen Sengun, is figuring out when and where and what version of himself the team ultimately needs. And so they got the scoring version of Alp there to close this game out in the fourth quarter. Couple other notes from this one. Amin Thompson racking up a ridiculous stat sheet here. 14 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, had a block. Just a little kind of mixed bag from Alperen Sengun, or not Alperen Sengun, I apologize. Amin Thompson just out there doing a little bit of everything. And then one other note, unfortunately, Tari Eason coming back down to earth with the 3-point shooting in this game. 6 points, 0 for 5 from 3. Didn't hit a single one. And I will note that unless I'm mistaken, I think his first few threes came above the break. And there's definitely something to be said for, I feel like in the corners. Specifically in that first quarter, he went oh my God, it was all in the first quarter. I would not have guessed that. And never mind. No, it wasn't all in the first quarter. I'm being dumb. Ignore me. I was like, what? All 5 threes in the first quarter didn't feel right. I know there was one quarter where he took at least a couple or 3 There it is. First quarter took a couple. Neither one of them, like one was, I guess, slightly more towards the corner, but he didn't get any of his usual corner threes, like deep corner threes, the PJ Tucker-esque threes. And I think that's definitely something that we're gonna have to look at in a future episode, is like what he's shooting percentage-wise from those above the break threes versus those corner threes. Because it feels like Tari from the above the breaks, threes, they're not really going in at a very steady clip, whereas he felt basically automatic from the corners for a chunk of this season. So hopefully getting back to that and getting him in those corners and able to take advantage of, again, so much of the attention that Alperen Sengun and Kevin Durant are able to draw, and potentially some of that increased floor spacing that Reed Sheppard is looking at providing. And I'll tell you what, just to end off on this note, I mean, if Ime was going to make like a switch to the lineup, if he's really trusting Reed Sheppard and liking what he's seeing out of him, the Wizards would be a really solid team to make a lineup change against, because it's the Wizards. And it would give them a chance to kind of have like a little tune-up game with Reed in the starting lineup if they elected to go that route. But again, Ime is still always going to probably lean defense first. And maybe he still prefers to start the game with like that tone of that kind of the tone setting defense of Josh Okogie. So even if Okogie does start, if we get like a quick Reed Sheppard substitution, something like that, again, Okogie only played 17 minutes in this game, but when he starts, and when he starts like each half specifically, it helps kind of, get that defensive mentality going for the team. And then other guys can just pick up where he left off once they check into the game. But Ime Udoka might value the offense more. He might value the floor spacing. And as Reed Sheppard continues to get better and better with each passing game defensively, then there's less of a reason that you need Josh Okogie out there as Reed Sheppard continues to close the gap between, like, again, defensive liability at times earlier this season to, like, in this game, being a plus level defender, right? Making a lot of defensive plays. Weirdly enough, and this is the final note that I'll leave this on Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard is similar to Tari Eason in the regard that they're both defensive playmakers or defensive creators, right? They both cause havoc defensively. They both got very quick hands. And for Tari, right, it's just he's got these massive, like, baseball mitt hands, right? Can get his hands on, the basketball, get a steal here or there, rip it away from an opposing player because he's so strong. With Reed, it's all about timing. And what they both do, though, is they both create those opportunities, be it deflections, steals, strips, whatever. And that turns into transition opportunities for the Rockets to be able to get on run and do things in transition that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do at the end of the day. And even in this game, the Rockets, like, transition scoring wasn't a ton. It wasn't great. And they didn't even really crush them in, like, points off turnovers. Like, they were solid-ish. They had a ton of turnovers in this game, and cleaning that up was a big part of Reed Sheppard in the second half, just taking better care of the basketball, going first half to second half, and limiting those turnovers and cleaning things up as the game progressed. Ime said that he showed them some film at halftime, and that was like one of the main points of emphasis at halftime was cleaning up some of their turnovers, especially after the turnover fiasco that we saw against the Spurs. To come in and do some of the same mistakes against the Bucks was frustrating, but they cleaned up their act in the second half, and they were able to put together a solid enough game to be able to pull this one out. And again, they just dominated again on the glass, 50-27. Rebounding advantage. Rockets had 20 offensive rebounds in this game. That's just nuts. With that, I want your thoughts from this game. Rockets rallying past the Milwaukee Bucks 122-115. Give me your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.